Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another episode of Achieving Perfection for the Elderspark event. This is going to be for the Storm the Citadel node. So I've gotten a lot of requests to make the video for this particular node, so per the usual, going to go ahead, show off the decks that I would suggest, and then get into explanations, and then some alternate deck ideas if you can't make what I am showing. So for newer players, I would go with Liliana 1 or Ob Nixilis, and I'd play this one. I think that Liliana 1 is going to be better for you here than Ob, and I'll explain that when we get into the video a little bit more. For players with larger collections, I'd go with one of the following. So this is personally what I would be going with. I have Garruk, so if you don't have Garruk, obviously you don't go this, but I'd go for this. And if you don't have Garruk, so you didn't buy him, then I would go with Tamiyo instead, and I'd go with this. All right, let's get into the node itself. So, ooh, that's really close up. Thank you very much. Let's go to Storm the Citadel. Where are you? There you are. Okay, so this node is going to have 320 health. It's got +5 for mana bonuses to all colors. And it's got 3 abilities that are all really actually stinkers of abilities. So the first one, Ravnica's Battlegrounds, is only going to cost 3 loyalty. And it's going to say, if you don't control a support, you being Storm the Citadel. So if Storm the Citadel doesn't control a support named Ravnica's Battlegrounds, it creates a Ravnica Battlegrounds support token, which is a colorless land, that has 8 shields, and whenever a creature deals combat damage to an opponent, destroy a non-land, non-Vanguard support that player controls. That alone is why I would go with Liliana over Ob Nixilis, because if you get Ob Nixilis' ultimate out and then Storm the Citadel gets a creature down and hits you, you probably just lost your ultimate. So that really stinks, whereas Liliana is able to bring things back. So, countdown. If you don't control a support named Blast Zone, create a copy of Blast Zone on the board under your control. Blast Zone is a land support that reinforces and then destroys everything that has converted mana cost with less than its shields. So the more of those that it gets off, the worse it is. And then Open War, each creature token and support token your opponent controls is destroyed. Your objective is to win the fight, then Partnership, so cast 4 or more cards with Partner during a fight, and Veteran, cast 3 or more creatures with cost 12 or more. So, for newer players, why do I like Liliana? I like Liliana here for a few reasons. One, Corrupt. That's going to make it so that you can just completely get rid of your opponent's hand, and so you don't have to worry about it playing really nasty cards. 2, and more importantly, is that Raise Dead ability. So this particular node is going to be removing a lot of your creatures, and it's really nice to be able to just get them back. So Raise Dead is going to be really useful for you in this particular on this particular node. Now, for the deck itself, you're going to want to make sure that you're casting your creatures and you're dealing with Partner. So this is probably going to be a longer node. If you want, you can actually go ahead and swap out the Orzhov Racketeers, or you can swap out another card if you want to throw in Despoiler of Souls from Origins. So if you're curious, what is that, Nalthazar? It is this. So I detailed it in another video in this particular events series, but it's just a creature that when it dies, it comes back. So you're going to be having the opponent using up the mana, resources, etc., getting rid of that to bring it back. So the first thing you want to do is you want to check and see that you have cards with Partner. And so for this one, we're going to run Engrath's Rampage, which is going to serve as removal, as this particular deck has both Kiora and Tamiyo Vanguards, and then you can also destroy your opponent's first creature. And then Liliana's Triumph is going to destroy your opponent's last creature, and if you have a Vanguard out, your opponent discards a card. So between the two, with all of the removal you're going to be using, you should have absolutely no problem with that. Cast 4 cards with partner. And then for creatures, I really like Graveblade Marauder here. I like this one because the creature that has the greatest power in the opposing deck is Storiv, and that has 6 power. So at the very least, Graveblade Marauder is going to be able to take out 2 of your opponent's creatures, and I really like that. So that's a pretty nifty feat of this card, and you can just keep bringing him back with Liliana's ultimate, and the more of him that die, the more stacks you bring back of him, and that's fantastic. So really like that. Consecrate, again, consume. This is going to help you get life back and serve as removal. This is a really important card to have in your collection. Death Sprout, one of the most important cards to have in your collection. This is going to destroy a creature and then fetch a land. And so we've got Witch's Cottage, which is going to actually give you your creatures back. You don't want this to come out if you don't have many creatures and you're about to use Liliana's ultimate, but otherwise it lets you get your creatures back without having to use your ultimate, so you can just focus on using your first ability more. So pretty nifty. Gateway Plaza is going to serve as additional gem conversion. If you have better options, use them. So things that specifically convert to your Planeswalker's colors. Or if you have it, so instead, the very best card to have for this particular node is actually Karn's Bastion. So this is a land that has partner. And so with Death Sprout, you just get to autocast this, and it's going to provide you with mana, and it's going to complete the partner objective. So I would go with that. Discovery is going to serve as card draw. Thank you. And it can also bounce and kill things. And the Surveil ability can make it so you can put creatures in your graveyard to bring them back. So the last piece of this deck is Ugin. So Ugin is a card that everyone should have. It was gifted to all of us. And so Ugin's going to create colorless spirit tokens. And that's great because your opponent's just going to start wasting their kill spells and stuff to get rid of these. So that's pretty nice. You can get rid of your opponent's vanguards, which is also pretty nice. And then while it's on the board, your colorless cards cost 2 less. You take a look at your deck, and that's just your lands. So not bad. But yeah, this is a very solid deck for this node. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to, like, no matter what, win every time, because if this is a really brutal event. It is not very nice to newer players, but this will give you a really solid fighting chance to win most of the time and complete all of the objectives. So for people who have bigger collections, I really like having something that gains life for these types of nodes. So I'm running Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord. You can go ahead and run Nissa's Revelation if you do not have Sorin. So Nissa, this one here that draws cards and gains life. So this is a perfect alternative to Sorin. You can use that. Or as you take a look at my creatures, you could actually swap one of them out. Not Cavalier of Thorns. Do not swap out Cavalier. But you could swap one of them out for the Angel Sephara. So that's just a lifelink creature. So that's going to gain you life. This one. But I personally prefer the other options. Okay, so other options better. I would take out Atrata for Sephara if you do that, just because it gives Razia that permanent prevent damage. All right, the rest of the deck. So Cavalier of Thorns with Karn's Bastion is what is going to complete the partner objective for you. So Cavalier of Thorns and Death Sprout are both going to cast the Karn's Bastion. Don't use things like Golos or Primeval Titan if you're using them just to complete the objective, because they bring Karn's Bastion directly onto the battlefield, so that's not going to count as casting. So Cavalier of Thorns and Death Sprout, bring them back, give it mana. That's going to count for casting. That's going to complete your objective. Cavalier of Thorns also has a converted mana cost of 12 or more, so it's going to come back. And Cavalier of Thorns also has an ability when it dies to give you cards back from your graveyard, which is really good. So I really like this one here for this particular node. If you want, you can actually go ahead and swap out Nissa's Pilgrimage here for another land. If you're pretty confident that you're going to be achieving your objectives for the partner, then you can actually go ahead and swap that out for Gingerbread Cabin. This one is excellent on this node. One, the opponent doesn't really have a good way of getting rid of it. 2, it creates 2 food tokens. These are supports that are not lands. So that's going to make it so that all of the opponent's abilities that destroy your non-land supports, it's going to destroy those instead of destroying Killer Instinct. So it basically just creates a wall that makes it harder for Killer Instinct to die, and that's really nice. That's another reason why I'm using this as Pilgrimage, because it's a very low mana cost card that sort of serves as a shield for Killer Instinct and also gives us mana. So it serves both purposes. I like it a lot. For the creatures, apart from Cavalier, we've got Razia to block everything, Atrata because it exiles stuff. I don't want the other deck to get things back. It has a bunch of stuff that gets cards back from the graveyard. Between the Tamio Vanguard, that brings things back. We've got Storiv, that's going to also bring things back. And so we don't like those. There's also Kaya's Ghost form, but unfortunately that one also brings things back from exile. So, oh well. The Great Aurora is in here because this is a deck that can actually overwhelm you. It can actually just get out a whole bunch of supports and creatures, and you're just in a position where you've got nothing you can do, especially because it's running Tithe Taker, which is going to lower your mana bonuses. It's really nice to have a card like Great Aurora to just be a complete wipe. So yeah, I would definitely run that. And finally, I'm running Finale of Revelation to draw cards. I like having card draw, but once again, if you want to swap this for Nissa's Revelation for the life gain, that's perfectly fine too. So this is a very good option, and you will pretty assuredly get perfect if you run this deck. Now, what I would be running personally is Garruk. I like Garruk because Stalk the Prey just gives you so many more options with how you're playing your deck that, yeah, it's just such an amazing ability. So it's going to kill your opponent's creatures, it's going to draw you cards, and it's going to gain you life. So it just keeps you in the game, keeps you with cards, gets rid of stuff for your opponent. I really think it's one of the best Planeswalker abilities in the game. So yeah, I would, if you have him, use him. Cursed Predation is going to give you wolf tokens and that nasty support that's going to make it so that you can just wipe your opponent's field. And so with that support out, it makes it so that your opponent is just never going to hit you personally, which means that you never have to actually worry about it destroying your Killer Instinct. Now, I know what I said about Golos and it not counting for the summon. I put Golos in here because he's going to fetch cabins, which is good. The general converted mana cost of this deck is absurdly high. So of the cards that it can fetch, you've got 17, 10, 14, 13, 16, 16, 15, 13. That's really, really high, and there isn't a lot of gem conversion here. So I'm running Golos so that we can get that additional those additional cards. And because of Killer Instinct and Death Sprout and Cavalier of Thorns, I'm confident that I'll be getting the Karn's Bastions enough that this is not going to be a problem at all. I've got Rakdos in here to kill everything. You can go ahead and use something else. I know that I've got green gem conversion, and that sort of goes against Rakdos. So, I mean, if you wanted to run something else, by all means, you've got a bunch of really good options here. You can actually run Atrata again. That one might even make more sense than Rakdos for this node, to be honest. You can run Zodix. Zodix pretty good for this node. You can run Borborygmos if you want to get a quicker kill. But really, I wouldn't run too much other than that for this particular node. You definitely want to have removal from your creatures if you can. So yeah, not Rankle. Not Rankle. Okay, yeah. So that's really what I'd go with. Now, if you don't have the decks, if you don't have the cards for my decks, here's what you're going to want to do. So you're going to want to go, and the first thing you want to do is search up Partner. So Partner is a mechanic that's like it's okay as a mechanic, but they just didn't really make good cards around Partner, so that makes it a little bit challenging. So the good cards that have Partner are Liliana's Triumph. This is an amazing card, and it has Partner, so definitely worth using. We've also got Gideon's Triumph. This is another amazing card, and it has Partner. It's very solid. We've got, this one's passable. It sort of gets rid of creatures, so that's really nice. It just acts as removal. We like removal. Karn's Bastion, like I said, this is the best one just because with Death Sprout and Cavalier of Thorns, you can just keep getting it. There are other cards that get you lands, and so just use those land cards and the Bastion, and that helps. Engrath's Rampage is another good one. Wanderer's Strike is definitely overpriced. I would not use it if you have other options, but if you don't, it's still a decent card because it exiles a creature. And that's really it. So in large part, the partner cards for the most part are just overcosted for what they do. Don't use these other ones. They're not worth it. Ugin's Conjurant isn't bad as a creature, but don't use it, right? It doesn't fill out the creature objective, so that's not good. Yeah, so other than that, my other suggestions for you is once you figure out the partner, if you don't have a lot of like really high cost creatures, go ahead, make sure that you have some of these mythics from Ravnica, the ones from the events. So the events that are 12 or more mana are going to be that are actually like playable for this particular node, right? So you can run Tibor and Lumia. This one's really meh, especially since you're not going to want to be running like a bunch of stuff that has a red spell if you're running this with partner cards. But you know, it's serviceable. Or better yet, you run it with something like, where are you? Asperia. So Asperia is going to fetch you more Asperias if you're running the flyers. And so if this is your only creature with flying, you just keep fetching more and more of them. And it makes it really easy to finish that cast 3 or more creatures with cost 12 or more. Because once you get the first Asperia down, it's going to give half mana to all of the other Asperias that you draw. And so I think that means that it actually gets 9 mana. I think it gets 9 instead of 8. They give you the benefit of the doubt there. So in gaining 9 mana, you're going to go ahead and only need to spend 8 mana per cast for Asperia. So it makes it just a little bit easier for you to complete that objective. So other than that, make sure that your creatures give you some form of removal. Make sure you're packing heavy removal. And if you can, make sure that you have ways of bringing things back from the graveyard and wiping the board. So those are my general suggestions. Oh, one last one. I'm sorry. I know. I said I was done, but I'm not. Go ahead, look at what you have for destroying the board. You want to run... Get out of here. You want to run Flood of Tears is great for this node. Planar Cleansing is great for this node. The Great Aurora is great for this node. And, oh, I only had Mythics. Shame on me. Oh, my. Bad. Casualties of War is going to be really good for you here. It's pretty expensive, though, because of the land thing, but because this opposing deck does indeed run lands, vanguards, enchantments, artifacts, and creatures, you can actually get all 5 removed with 1 Casualty of War. Displacement Wave could be a perfectly viable option. As it doesn't get rid of supports, though, I wouldn't use it over the other things that I suggested. So that's really it. I hope this helps you. I hope you get perfect, and I'll see you in the next one.